Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter. This is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happens. So today, we rejoin a side group of my friends known as Ben, and Sally, whose names have been changed to protect the innocent, or the not-so-innocent, rather. We ran into them a little bit during the Hidden Trio episode some time ago, but they did run in some campaigns, just the three of them together. And I kept them separate from my high school buddies, from my college buddies, from my Gamers Guild buddies. I made very sure to keep them away from all my other friends because they were absolute perverts, and yes, it is just as bad as it sounds. So for this episode, make sure you're wearing headphones or turn the volume down, or, make sure your little sister's not watching over your shoulder, or make sure your mom is not going to go by behind you, or your spouse, or, any prude that might be in your life, because it's going to get explicit this episode, I promise you. So, you kind of need a little bit of context for these people. I don't think I did very well the last time we talked about Ben, and Sally. And you need some context for kind of who they were to make this story kind of stand out and go to its full fruition. We had Strong Ben, who was a great big dude. He was a part of the weightlifting team at Western Kentucky University. Great big muscly dude, and he was kind of like a closet nerd. He didn't want people to know that he had like a poster of Middle Earth in his dorm room. He didn't want people to know that he could quote the Silmarillion for like 15 pages straight, that he loved D&D and wanted to get into it, but he had trouble finding a group. Great big dude, a little misogynistic, but again, weightlifter, mediocre grades, wanted to be on the football team, couldn't quite make it. But damn if he wasn't a good D&D player. So, by strange circumstance, I met him, and he also came with another buddy who was called Fast Ben. And that's just how I kept them separate, because, I've changed their names to protect the innocent, but they did share a name. So, I called him Fast Ben, because Fast Ben was on the track team. He was a cross-country runner. He had, like, ribbons for running marathons and medals for doing, like, inner city, not like the Boston Marathon, but, like, great big, like, 10-kilometer. He had a lot of silver medals and a couple of gold medals. Like, he was an accomplished runner. He could not be late for class. There was no stopping him. But he was really tall, really skinny, built like a kung fu fighter, because all 100 pounds of him was freaking muscle, especially in his legs. Whew. But then we had Sally. Sally was just kind of your average college girl. She came into Gamers Guild one day. She showed some interest in Magic the Gathering, in Settlers of Catan, and all these different things. And I kind of grew to know her over like a year and a half. And eventually I found out that she was kind of a slut, too. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, because, like, hey, more power to you if you want to take charge of your sexuality, but, like, flavor of the month boyfriends and stuff like that, the rumors were, like, most of the guys had a bowl of her cereal, so let's put it that way. You don't think, like, if you've ever seen, like, Girls Gone Wild or something, you don't think girls like that are real. Oh, they're real. And Sally was one of those kind of girls. But she was very smart, very crafty. She would have made a very good rogue, but I don't think she ever actually played a rogue. I'm not sure. We'll have to get into that another time. That doesn't have to do with this story. But she was very good at coming up with complicated and sometimes very easy solutions to all of her problems in tabletop games, a lot of which involves sex, which of course Ben ate up like candy. So they made this perfect storm of perverts that just kind of fucked their way through every campaign they could get a part of. Like, there was no book of erotic fantasy here. It was just them. And it was me sitting red-faced behind the DM screen while they make up all this perverted crap and just kind of stumble their way through all these campaigns. So, you college was an interesting time for me when it came to these three people, and like I said, I kept them very separate from all my other friends because I was kind of embarrassed to hang out with them, but at the same time it was like a car wreck. Like, I couldn't look away, it was too interesting. But this was one of the first campaigns that they played in, just the three of them, and like I said, it became a perfect storm. So allow me to kind of paint the picture for you. We come to an archipelago, a series of island nations that has been wrested under the control of a great emperor and ushered in an era of peace. And he grabbed control of like 12 or 13 islands, and there's like hundreds of them. This world has already experienced kind of a global warming, so everybody lives up on the mountaintops in these tiny villages and stuff. But this guy had like a plateau all to himself with lots of farmland and a loyal army and loyal citizens, and he treated everybody pretty well for an emperor. And this was like an Eastern style campaign, so there were samurai and ninjas and Chinese dragons flying the sky and things like that. And it was getting to the point where the emperor was much celebrated. So if you've played Civilization, We Love the King Day, it was kind of like that. He brought about, like, given what they had left, a golden age of prosperity for his people, because if he was very good at maintaining roads, at maintaining food supplies, at making sure that people weren't drinking the seawater and just stuff like that. He was a very nice, very good ruler by and by. And they had the rough equivalent of, like, We Love the King Day. It wasn't his birthday, it wasn't really his anniversary, it was just kind of a holiday that got made up in his honor. And one of the things that every island was supposed to do, because these used to be like tiny little city-states, each island was its own nation until he took over like 12 of them and brought them under his banner. Every nation, every little island that he was in charge of would bring him tribute for being such a great emperor because they loved him. He made good decisions. He had to strong-arm a lot of people, but it's been a while. The peace is kind of settled. The dust is kind of settled. So they're like, he's a pretty good leader. So they declare a holiday for him, and they're going to send him tribute. And it is up to Ben, and Sally to deliver his gift from A to B. They, of course, live out on the furthest island, farthest away from the Imperial Palace. And there are bridges that go between all of the islands because they're close enough together. Remember, this is a mountain range that's basically underwater now. So the peaks are close enough together that bridges have been built and you can just pay the toll and go across and stuff like that. So their island decides to send a solid gold urn to the emperor, and inside are these glass spheres with symbols for good luck, for prosperity, for financial prosperity, things like that, written on them, like a blessing almost. So it's filled with these orbs about the size of softballs, made of glass, solid gold urn. It weighs like 50 pounds, so it's actual gold. It's not gold plated. And they say, okay, Ben, and Sally are going to take this from this island nation all the way across the archipelago of nations that this emperor controls, or islands that this emperor controls, all the way to the Imperial Palace. And so Ben, of course, or Big Ben, rather, of course, being a weightlifter, a guy that believes in physical strength to make his way through the real world, rolls up a fighter, dresses himself out in the plate mail. He's a very basic character. That's fine. He serves as the tank. Fast Ben decides he wants to be a cleric. I forget what god, but he wanted to just be the healer. He dressed up in robes, and he had like a golden holy symbol and a regular old baton or mace or something. He was all about keeping his party members alive. And then Sally decided that she wanted to be a monk, so she ended up with like this tiny little Asian woman with her black hair up in a bun who had the washboard abs, and she didn't really need any weapons or anything, so she got to save all of her money for like magic rings and cool shit that she could she could wield otherwise. So we actually ended up with the holy trinity of party members: a tank, a healer, and a DPS. So they worked very well together, and with this heavy urn in tow upon Big Ben's back, they were to travel from island to island across each of these great bridges to the Imperial Palace. Now, like I said, there are roving ninja clans and dark ninja cults and other like stereotypical T doesn't understand Eastern culture things running around. So they might run into a Chinese dragon that's got an eye for gold, even though the Chinese regard dragons as good luck charms. There were some greedy ones there, and there were evil ninja cults that saw they were carrying a 50-pound golden urn, and they wanted that so they could melt it down and, you know, turn it into money for their evil ninja cult shit. I don't remember what it was. But they saw this gigantic golden object being carted across these bridges, across these easily assailable locations. So as they traveled from island to island across these gigantic wooden, painted red with paper lanterns bridges, they would just get continually dogged by these groups of freaking ninjas. And I don't mean like traditional ninjas, like actual ninjas. They weren't like dressed in street clothes and then they go with the blowgun and you're dead. But it wasn't like obnoxious like Naruto ninjas. These were like the guys dressed in black that you see in kung fu movies, like obnoxious kung fu ninjas. And I found out pretty quickly that Ben, and Sally enjoyed the chunky salsa fight, where you would have like 25 dudes, but all of them have like 5 HP. So you might go, oh, he's dead. Oh, he's dead. Oh, he's dead. You know, like if you've ever watched Lord of the Rings, you know, there's so many orcs, but we can kill like 50 of them before we lose a guy. It was kind of like that. They really enjoyed like, you know, going back to back so that nobody could sneak up on them or like overtake them with flanking and stuff like that. And they would just wheel with their katanas, with their big swords, with their fists, and take out all these ninjas and throw them off the bridges and leave this giant battlefield of dead guys that were trying to take their urn. So they had like a lot of chunky salsa fights. Or I think later versions of D&D and Pathfinder called them minion fights, where there would be like one guy who's got a lot of stats and like a whole bunch of dudes that have no stats, hardly at all, or no health, like 10 armor and 5 health, and that was all they were, other than like their weapon. So they might get lucky and, you know, give you a paper cut, but there are like 50 of them, so you had to be kind of careful. They enjoyed the minion fights, or the chunky salsa fights, which is actually a good place to put a bard, if you think about it, because if you've got a bard behind all your ninjas, like giving everybody +4 to all their attacks, suddenly they're really fucking dangerous. So Sally learned to kind of leap over the crowd like freaking Spider-Man and start like punching whoever's buffing them in the face, while the boys dealt with like the big crowd of ninjas. And of course they got like magic katanas and magic amulets of Chinese dragons, and they got magic rings and, you know, boots that let them walk on water or create clouds, and then they could jump up on the clouds and then leap down on their enemies. I'm not super familiar with like Eastern style settings. I'm not nearly as comfortable with them as I am with like, you know, medieval Western Europe kind of settings. The best you can really do is to look at Tolkien and then try not to do any of that, and you'll come up with a good fantasy setting. But I knew almost nothing about like Eastern style settings at the time, so it's like, oh, you find a katana, oh, you get a good luck charm, it's got a dragon on it, and it's an Eastern style snake dragon, you know, when you go to sleep you'll earn double your health back and stuff like that. Just, I was kind of exploring new territory while they were learning more and more about like the inner workings of D&D, because they bumbled through a few one-shots, but this was like their first campaign, if I remember right. With them, it's hard to remember what order things happened in, but this was just one of their stories, so don't worry. There's plenty more to talk about with them. Anyway, in all eventuality, they come to about like the 3/4 mark, the 85% mark of their journey, and they've been going for like weeks at this point. Getting dogged by ninjas, getting riddles from dragons, picking up weird stuff, setting right what once was wrong in villages as they pass them, and they're the gigantic golden urn that is with them. The word is spreading that this might be a good luck charm. It might be some burden that these three poor heroes carry, that they must do all these good deeds before they are forgiven for some sin. The countryside is talking about them. So, the secret ninja cults that want their golden urn have no problem keeping track of where they are, which is what results in so many, like, roadside chunky salsa fights, or why they have to leave at least one person awake every night, or not sleep by the roadside, because the ninjas are just relentless trying to get this golden urn. And they go, how much is this golden urn actually worth? Like, if we ground it up into gold pieces, what would it be? I was like, dude, this would be like a 6-figure number. It weighs like 50 pounds, the glass balls inside notwithstanding. This is like at the very least 100,000 gold, up to like 250,000 gold, depending on how pure the metal is. We're like, oh, okay, well, this is like a serious tribute then. And they're like, yeah, this is probably pulled from the mines of several island nations through trade and all this stuff, and purified by this blacksmith and prayed over by monks and priests and stuff. This is a very valuable artifact. But unfortunately, it's so large and it's so heavy, it's slowing you down, and it's a very easily identified thing. I mean, you can throw a sheet over it, but, it's still urn-shaped, and the local rumors and scuttlebutt have already spread about you guys leaving a gigantic trail of dead ninjas everywhere you go, not to mention the dragons that you talk to. Dragons talk to each other, too, so they've heard about you. And they're leaving a trail of dead bodies everywhere they go. It's they, like I said, they enjoyed the chunky salsa fights so much, they leave a lot of dead in their wake. So it gets to the point where they're really pissing off the ninja clans. So it comes to the point where, like, the Black Ninja cult of the Dark Lotus, or whatever you want to call it, decides that they're not going to directly attack Ben, and Sally anymore because they are too powerful. They're like level 10, so they're actually very strong at this point in the campaign. And they decide that they're not going to send a great big group of ninjas after them yet. They're going to have one ninja trail them for a while and see where they stop. Because obviously they're not close enough to the Imperial Palace. They've kind of figured out where they're going. But they're not close enough to the Imperial Palace to really get there anytime soon, but they're going to have to stop and rest at some point, be it in like a roadside inn or a hotel or out on a boat where they think they're safer, etc., etc. And when they do, that is when the ninjas will pounce. So they come up on the next leg of their journey. They're moving from, like I said, from like the 3/4 mark to like the 85% mark. We were rolling it on a percentile. Like every session, they would roll a d10 to see like how far of like a percent they would move forward. So it was at the very least 10 games, and at the very most, it would be like 100 games. But that's neither here nor there. They usually rolled pretty well. And they're at about 75-85% mark, and they come across a gigantic, like, pagoda-shaped hotel, or inn, or whatever you want to call it. And it's out on this outcropping of stone, and it's surrounded by these steaming waters. And Sally kind of leans over this arched bridge and goes, "What is that? Why is it like that?" And I said, well, Sally, the whole nation is built on the tops of underwater mountains. Several of them are probably volcanoes, which means that this area is probably like a hot spring. There's hot mineral waters, and they probably built an inn or a tavern or whatever here to take advantage of all the pools for like their medicinal values, for making sure that travelers stay clean and in good health and things like that. So there's probably like hot springs here. It would be a good spot to stop for the night and like reinvigorate yourself. And they had just walked away from another like chunky salsa fight that gave them no loot and very little money, so they're kind of grumpy. And I go, well, if you stayed in the hot springs and like got massages and everything, you could completely restore your health before you go to bed. And they're all for this, because at level 10, you know, if you go to bed for a night and you only recover 10 or 15 health, you know, you may as well stop for a week before you get all your health back. And, you know, they're being chased by the Black Lotus ninja cult of whatever, so it's not a good idea to stay in one spot for very long. So when they hear, you know, insta heal to 100% of your health, oh, they're for that. Okay, that sounds like a good thing. You know, how expensive could it possibly be to stay here? And it's kind of expensive. They get like good rooms, they get good food, they get massages, and you know they decide they're going to bathe and take advantage of the hot springs so they can heal and rejuvenate their bodies and get rid of all the negative chi and get the poisons out of like the bottoms of their feet and all the sacred traditions and things that go, that, you know, T doesn't know what he's talking about when it comes to Chinese medicine and things like that. They basically said, if you stay here, it'll recover your health to full. And that's kind of how we went. And this was kind of like the hot springs episode. If you've ever seen like any anime ever that involves a lot of female characters, there's always one episode where everybody decides, oh, it'd be great to go to a hot springs for no other reason than to see all the characters naked, you know? It doesn't really add to the story ever. I can't think of any anime where there's a hot springs episode where you couldn't just take that episode out and nobody would know the difference. But I was like, you know, we've been traveling a long time. If there's a hot spring here. I didn't know it was going to spiral out of control quite like this, though. This is where the story gets interesting. The one ninja that was following behind them, and I gave them plenty of rolls to like notice this guy, to hear him following, to hear him stepping on twigs or leaping from branch to branch, and they just didn't have it. I was rolling like spot checks or passive perception or whatever you want to call that, where I'm just rolling and they don't know what I'm rolling for. I gave them like a dozen chances throughout the days that they were traveling to notice this guy, and they never did. He was a very stealthy ninja, so he knew what he was doing. Good for him. The one ninja that was following them around saw them, you know, stopping and stroking their chins and looking up at the pagoda-shaped inn and hotel that had the hot springs, and he realizes that they're going to stop there. They're going to stay there. You know, this isn't them stopping for 8 hours to like rest and then, you know, stomp out their campfire and move on. This is like a day or a day and a half like treatment kind of place. And it's got rice paper walls and you know, several stories and lots of windows, and you know, the hot springs is a big open area and things like that. So this would be the perfect place to pounce on our three heroes and or steal the urn if they leave it somewhere. So the ninja takes off into the tree line without them noticing to go get his ninja buddies, who have been following like kind of at a distance, or they have like different like ninja hideouts throughout the countryside. So he goes to like the nearest one and you know, tells them, hey, the guys with the 50-pound golden urn that's worth 100,000 gold, they're stopping for a day. So now is our time to strike, or now is our time to sneak in and steal the urn while their defenses are down. So it goes about how you would expect. Big Ben, Fast Ben, and Sally, they get their own rooms. They shed their armor and their magic items. Big Ben, you know, manhandles a floorboard and puts the urn under the floor, and then puts the floorboard back and puts his futon on top of it like they're not going to look there. It's like hiding porn under your under your mattress. That's like the first place they're gonna look. But whatever. There's really nowhere else to hide it. And they get massages and they bathe and they scrub themselves and they dump the water over their heads. And I go, okay, you've kind of got some free time while you're here. What are you gonna do? Big Ben, of course, he gets like his towel and he's like, I'm gonna go out to the hot springs and become rejuvenated. I've got like 100 health or whatever it was at level 10. It was quite a bit. I've got like 100 health I need to restore. I should probably go hang out in the hot springs. This is like the last leg of our journey. I should start out at 100%. So he puts down his katanas, he puts down his plate mail and all that other stuff, and plate mail in Eastern Asia. Yeah, good job, Tony. Good world building. But he goes out there and, he scrubs like you're supposed to. He dumps the water on his head so he's clean, and he goes out into the men's hot springs. And there's 3 hot springs here. There's the men's, the women's, and the community, or co-ed, or whatever you want to call it, where men and women can be. He goes out to the men's and he finds like a big boulder and he leans up against it and he sits down. He's just kind of meditating, kind of sitting there, enjoying the healing qualities. And of course, like there's a hot spring monkey that runs by. He's like, oh, look, hot spring monkey. And watches the monkeys fight over like a fruit or something, and he is entertained. So he sits there and he kind of watches them for a while. And then we go to Fast Ben, and I say, Fast Ben, what are you going to do? It's like, well, I make sure I get a massage and some acupuncture for my back, and then I think I'm going to go out to the hot spring too. I've got healing spells and stuff, but I would rather save them for the fires of battle. So I should go out there and become rejuvenated and get my health restored as well. So he does the same thing. He scrubs. He pours the water on his head. He goes out there. He's like, "Hey, Big Ben's over there. I'm gonna take that boulder over there, so we're not like sitting right next to each other or something." So he goes out there. He's got his tiny little water towel. He kind of throws it to one side, and then wanders out to like one of the smaller boulders. And Big Ben's like, "Oh, do you see the hot spring monkeys?" And he's like, "Yeah, I see the hot spring monkeys." He kind of rolls his eyes. And he sits cross-legged, and he kind of does some of his cleric stuff while he's sitting there enjoying the hot springs. He does like his prayers. He thinks about his spell slots. He's letting the minerals and the rejuvenating qualities of the hot spring kind of soak into his body. The water is like up to his chest while he's sitting down, so it's pretty nice. And I go, Sally, what are you going to do? Sally decides that she's going to go to the community hot spring. It's like the one between the men's and the women's. It's where you can find both genders at any given time. And Sally ain't scared to walk around naked because she's Sally. And she goes, "Is there anybody else out there?" And I roll for it. And I go, "Oh, it's a 1. Okay, there's one other person. Man or woman?" I roll it. Okay, it's a man. And she goes, we've been traveling for a long time. Is he good looking? And I was like, all right, let me roll this. 16 or 17 charisma. Yeah, he looks great. He's tan, he's bald-headed, he's kind of chiseled looking. He might be a monk also, hanging out in the hot springs here. He's sitting there naked in like the lotus position. He's got like water like across his lap. He's like sitting in the shallow part, kind of enjoying the silence, listening to the birds. "Oh, do you see that hot springs monkey? Ha 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 ha." And he kind of looks to one side like they're goofing off in the men's section. And Sally goes, "Is he shaven?" And I go, "Where?" And she says, "On his face." And I go, "Yes, he's very clean shaven." And of course, Sally steps out into the open, and if you've ever seen a monk's body, yes, please. She's got the dark cocoa skin and the C-cup breasts with plum purple nipples. She's unshaven between her legs. She's got the gorgeous muscles and the washboard abs. She is a fine specimen of what the feminine form can be when it comes to like kung fu and stuff. She's got her black hair. She kind of pulls the chopsticks out into her hair. Water falls down about her shoulder blades. She is gorgeous. And she has no sense of modesty because monks celebrate their bodies, kind of much the same way druids do. They're just a little more controlled about it, but Sally not so much. So She kind of thinks about it for a second. She's like, "Gosh, we're getting up on like the last leg of our journey. I should probably try to get laid, before we start all this pomp and ceremony with the emperor." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah." There's like one guy here out in this open hot spring, and she's like, "All right, I'm gonna go see if maybe I can seduce him, proposition him, see if he's that kind of guy." So she wanders over again, buck naked. She didn't bring a soapstone. She didn't bring like a little water towel to wear across her front or anything. She's proud of her body, and she's proud to show it off to this guy. And I go, again, like he's bald headed, he's got black eyebrows and dark eyes, he's got the tan skin and the washboard abs. Like I said, he's probably a monk as well. And Sally's like, what do I roll to seduce him? Like she doesn't even give him like her name. She's just like, maybe, yeah. And I was like, I guess that's diplomacy. And at the time, there were like charts and charts of shit for like people that don't know you, or people that think you look like a criminal, or people that would hold you in high regard. And if you've ever seen that episode of like Sherlock, where Sherlock runs into a completely naked woman who's got all the makeup and all the tarnishes on her body completely rubbed out and stuff, and like it goes into Sherlock's mind vision, and all you see is like question marks because he can't tell anything just by looking at her. It's kind of like that with this guy. He looks up at her and he sees like her toned, beautiful, gorgeous body, and he can't like tell if she's like good or evil, or if she's up to something or anything. Just that her body is freaking gorgeous, and she seems interested in him. So like any red-blooded man who would be in a setting like this, he kind of scoots over a little to let her sit with him and let the flirtation commence. So they start to kind of get into it, and again, they don't even exchange names. This is almost like if you pay close attention to like the Olympics, you see like Trojan and all those other companies, Magnum, send like boatloads of condoms to like the Olympic Village because the athletes just go at it like fucking superheroes during the weeks that they're there competing and stuff. It's like, people that are in the peak efficiency of human vitality and stuff like that just go at it like fucking animals while they're there. It's kind of like that, because both of them are in peak physical condition and they're both interested. So we cut back over to Fast Ben and Strong Ben, who are busy watching the monkeys, the hot spring monkeys, fight over the fruit. And in the background, the ninjas have entered the inn in Hot Springs, and they blow the poison dart and hit one of the staff so that they are not noticed, and they hit the lady behind the counter in the front and one of the gardeners, and they successfully sneak in, and they find their way to Ben's room, Big Ben's room, because the plate mail is sitting there, and they don't want his plate mail because you can't sneak around in plate mail. It's not worth anything to them. So they start looking for the urn. And of course, I roll the search. They roll really high on the search because they're thieves, they're ninjas. And they push his futon aside. Oh, this floorboard has been pulled up. So they find the urn like straight away. And like the two ninjas pull it up. God, it weighs a ton. They're not going to be able to like leap over the wall with this 50-pound weight on their backs. So they have to go through the hallway and to go past the hot spring doors, which are of course open because it's a hot spring place. They've got like rice paper walls and crap like that. And as they're going by, Big Ben just happens to look over away from the monkey fight to see that the ninjas have their urn, and they're like walking it slowly down this hallway. And he's like, "Ninjas, they've got our fucking urn, let's get them." And he does this Spider-Man leap up out of the hot spring, like cock flying, like a fish, just cock flying. He leaps up onto this boulder and then leaps across the water to the edge, dripping with water, sending a rainbow into the air behind her. And Fast Ben looks through and he's like, "Ninjas, he's got our urn." And he starts running, he's like sloshing across the water. And the ninjas see them, and start going faster, as fast as they can. They give the golden urn to one ninja. And Fast Ben and Big Ben like boil out of the hallway, buck naked, to like tackle these ninjas into this bizarre copy fight between like just dash them through a rice paper wall, just like grabbing them by the hair and punching them in the face. And we cut back over to Sally and the other monk guy, whom it doesn't take long to kind of like get up into his lap. And I was like, he's erect. He's ready for you. And she's like, I stroke his abs. She's, God, it's so awkward. Because usually when, like, sex happens in my D&D games, we do, like, a graceful fade to black, or we mention doggy style, we mention squealing, or, what happened during the pillow talk, etc., etc. Sally wanted details. So she was like, what is he like? Is he talented in the ways of the bedroom? And I was like, I guess. Let me roll it. And at the time, we were using exploding dice. And exploding dice means that if you roll and you roll a 20, you roll again, and then you add them. So, like, I roll it, he rolls a 20. I was like, all right. Roll again. 20. Damn it. Roll again. 17. So he gets like a thrust rating, or a sex rating, if you will, of 57. And Sally goes, oh! And I was like, he puts you back up against like one of the boulders, and she wraps her legs around his waist, and he goes to town on her. Like there's no modesty here. It's just like animals going at it. There's nobody else in this hot spring. There's not really many other people in this hotel. So she can just kind of cling to him and let him have his vicious way with her, because he's like her. He's all muscle, not a drop of fat on this guy, so that he can just bounce this woman against a rock, and the rock might break. You never know. After a while, and I was like, all right, he comes inside you and makes sure that you get yours with a 57. You probably get more than one orgasm. And he holds you there against the rock, like looking into your eyes, and he's got like a fistful of one of your breasts, and he's just kind of holding you there like he owns you. Like he didn't even get your name, and he's filled you with his seed. This is how this conversation kind of went. And I'm sitting behind the DM screen just red as a beet, while Ben and Ben are laughing, and Sally is totally enjoying herself, because of course she is. And we cut back to Ben and Ben, who are fighting the ninjas over in the hallway, which of course Sally doesn't hear because she's too busy getting fucked by another monk, but that's neither here nor there. And finally, Ben gets a hold of the urn. He like punches one of these ninjas in the small of the back, and he drops this urn on his own feet and cries out in pain. And Ben grabs the urn, and it's tied shut. It's got like Taoist seals on it and all kinds of things, so the glass balls are not going to come out anytime soon. And he picks it up and he's like, I'm going to hit this ninja with the urn. I was like, all right, well, it's a 50-pound weight. It's an improvised weapon. It'll do this much damage. And he doesn't swing it. He throws it. And I was like, all right, you can only throw like a throwing dagger like 10 feet. So throwing an improvised weapon, especially one that weighs that much, he better be right next to you. And of course he is. And I was like, well, you let go of it, so it's going to like bounce or something. It's going to knock him down and roll away. So I mark the 8 directions on a grid board, and then I roll the D8. He throws this urn, and it bashes a ninja over the head. It bounces, and it bashes into another ninja and kills him instantly. I was like, you killed 2 ninjas with the golden urn that you're supposed to deliver to the Emperor. And more ninjas burst through the rice paper walls. Like, the time for stealth is over. The urn is covered with blood. There's already 2 or 3 or 4 dead ninjas. These guys are naked. They're dripping with water. The the wooden floor is slippery territory now because it's painted and it doesn't have carpet on it. So there's a possibility for people to slip if they run at each other. And like 5 or 6 more ninjas show up immediately to like overtake them because, if you're a fighter, you're very reliant on 2 things: your gear and your big health pool. And, he doesn't have his gear right now. And of course, Fast Ben, who is our cleric, doesn't have his holy symbol or any of his spell focuses or anything. So he's got like the spells that he knew at the end of the day after that last fight, so not very much. They basically got caught with their pants down. Pants off, rather. They're both standing there naked. But so with their dorks flopping about like a pair of helicopters, they grab the urn and they dash towards their room where all their stuff is. And Big Ben's like, what can I put on in like 5 seconds? Because like plate mail takes like 5 or 10 minutes to put on properly and 5 minutes to put on hastily. I was like, you can grab like a katana and your helmet, and that's about it. So Big Ben grabs his helmet and he grabs his katana. He's like, all right, I turn around to fight the ninjas. And Fast Ben like grabs his holy symbol and like his mace or his baton or whatever it was. And he's like, all right, I turn around to fight the ninjas. And they charge in to fight these guys buck naked. I was like, you've both got like battle erections at this point. The adrenaline is too much. So they're sporting these 7-inch boners as they charge at these ninjas, shouting obscenities at them as they're going. And of course, you don't expect 2 naked dudes with swords to run around the corner into a giant crowd of ninjas. But again, this is a chunky salsa fight, so they start slicing through ninjas, and the ninjas are throwing shuriken that are sticking into their chests, into their shoulders, like cutting them across the cheek, like you see in different animes when they lean to one side, but the blade paints a red line across their cheeks. So this battle is going on in this tiny hotel where half the staff has been hit by sleepy darts, and the other half is not accounted for. So we go back to Sally and her love interest of the moment, and Sally, I go, he's taking a soapstone and just kind of like throwing you up against one of the boulders. And she goes, oh, I squeal under his dominance. Like, she doesn't care that there's a fight going on right now, or she doesn't hear it or something like that. She's more interested in this guy. And I go, he grabs a soapstone to kind of like lube up his dick, and he turns you over and bends you over one of these boulders, and he grabs your raven black hair and he bends your back like a bow. And she's like, oh, I squeal under his dominance. I was like, you can feel he's gonna go for the back door here. And she goes, I spread my legs and I tilt my hips at him. And I was like, all right, she is way too into this. And again, cherry red face. Ben and Ben are laughing. There's a ninja fight going on one place. There's a porno going on in another place. I was like, all right, he starts to go at you anally. And he bends over you like a dominant beast, grabbing fistfuls of your breasts and like tweaking your purple plum nipples while he dominates you sexually. And it's like you can feel like the rock under you is cracking because he is at least as strong as you, if not stronger. And Sally is, again, a level 10 monk. So, you're receiving like the pounding of a lifetime. And all he did was like lube himself with like a soapstone. So that's about as much you're going to get in terms of like lubricant. And he fills you with his seed again before he kind of pulls out and wipes his tip and his dick over your ass. And I go, is that enough, Sally? And she goes, what are we doing in terms of like endurance? Is he winding down? He's not going to beat me in terms of stamina, is he? I was like, oh God, we're still going at this. All right. So I roll like not endurance, but like stamina or fortitude rather. D&D is fortitude. And I go, he's starting to slow down, but he's probably still got like one more round in him. She goes, do I get any XP for this? I was like, shut up. Meanwhile, Ben and Ben are fighting the ninjas, and eventually they manage to overtake these guys and send what few of them are remaining are leaping over the wall, leaving the urn behind in Ben and Ben's possession. And they're both standing there, like, holding a sword. They've got the urn between them. They've got, like, a pile of shurikens. Some of them are sticking out of their bodies. Gigantic fucking erections. Waiting, like, we should go find Sally. You know, she wasn't even a part of this. We should go see what's going on with her. They only come to find out later that she was spending the whole time having sex with this guy because he puts her up against, like, a stone wall. And, like, he cleans himself off and then he goes at her again before his stamina managed to run out. Again, they don't exchange names. They don't do anything. They just decide they're going to go at it. And again, Sally asked me, you know, do I get an EXP for that? And I was like, all right, fine. It's, roll a d20 and, like, multiply it by 5 and then multiply it by your level. And, you know, that's at the very most, like, what, 10 times 10, or no, 10 times 5 is 50, you know, times 20 is X amount. Is like, it's a drop in the bucket at level 10, but it's, I try to do the same when my characters have, like, bar winches or anything. I'll give them, like, 25 XP, you know, good job, you got laid. You know, that's something unto your character that you are sexually experienced, or you get lover's comfort, like in Skyrim, things like that. So I gave her, like, a drop in the bucket of XP, and she was happy. So she finally, after he's come inside her, like, 3 times, she finally, like, gives him her name, you know, where she is from, you know, where she's going to be after her quest is over, in such case that they should cross paths again someday, because goodness knows they will. And after a while, Ben and Ben come into the co-ed hot spring to find her, like, draped across his lap, so where they're both just kind of resting. He's playing with one of her breasts, looking quite pleased with himself. And Ben kind of tell her, you know, Sally, there were ninjas. Did any ninjas come in here? And she goes, I don't know. And they're like, oh, that's what you were up to this whole time. Sorry, we'll come find you in the morning. And they don't even say hi to the guy, like he was just the boy toy of the round. They say, you know, don't worry, Sally, we'll come find you later. You know, have fun. We're all here to be rejuvenated and to see to all of our needs. And they go on after that. Like, the day passes, they get rejuvenated, they go on through the rest of their quest, basically unharassed. Like, they roll really well on their traveling stuff, and they make it all the way to the Imperial Palace to deliver the tribute to the Emperor. And that is where that campaign ended. Let us take a step back into real life. After that particular session ended, I was at the Downing University Center at Western Kentucky University, where I was going to school at the time. And they have a big cafeteria where you pay a flat fee, and, like, you can go get pizza or whatever they're serving here, or like the healthy food that they want the students to eat and stuff like that. It's a great big cafeteria. I was sitting there eating my lunch. Who comes around the corner? Big Ben. And Big Ben, I, like, wave him over. He comes over, he sits down with me, and he's like, dude, after that game the other night, you should have stayed for the after party. And I go, after party? What are you talking about? And he kind of looks around for a second like he's going to tell me some kind of atomic secret. And he leans forward and he goes, you know, that night after the Hot Springs game, me and Ben put Sally in the Ben sandwich. And my fork kind of pauses, and I look up at him and I go, what? And I go, we had a threesome with Sally. She was super horny after that game, dude. Ben and I put her in the Ben sandwich. And I was like, you're full of shit. I don't believe you. And he starts going on this tirade, as college students are wont to do, about their sexual exploits. And he gets into this long tirade. And if you're good friends, sometimes it's good to brag about that. Sometimes it's not. It was getting awkward. I was eating lunch, and he was talking about coming on this girl's tits and stuff like that. So it was like, yeah, I don't believe you. Sally, and I kind of would lower my voice a little. It's like, Sally's a slut, but I don't think she would be into you or Fast Ben. It's like, I don't believe him, especially after that game. Like, there's just, I don't believe him at all. However, like some kind of weird Saved by the Bell episode or something like that, who should come around the corner next with a tray of food but Sally, who I glance at and then look back at Big Ben, and I don't say anything, and I was like, this is happening. This is actually going to happen, and I'm going to remember it for the rest of my life. So I don't say anything while Big Ben is like making the lewd gestures and telling me all about like his sexual conquest with Sally and with Fast Ben there to help as well. And Sally kind of stands behind him for a few moments, and her face is getting redder and redder and redder. And finally, she takes like her soda cup and she just dumps it on his head, and then she baps him on the back of the head with the empty cup. And he goes, "Ah, what the heck?" And she goes, "You weren't supposed to tell anybody about that." And then she dumps her food tray over him, like fish sticks and mac and cheese and broccoli, just all down his back, inside his shirt, all over him. I'm laughing. Ben is covered with food, and she just throws down her tray and she stalks away, pissed. And now I know two things. Number one, this threesome did happen because she wouldn't have done that otherwise. And number two, that Ben was not supposed to talk about it. So, here I am like 10 years later when we've since scattered to the winds and I've changed everybody's name and stuff. So I'm not worried about her honor at this point. But I was like, you kind of asked for that. And I kind of like sip my drink as he gets like a towel from one of the lunch ladies. Is like, why was she so mad at you? Oh, nothing. Girls. And I didn't see Sally for a week, as you can imagine. She did not want to be anywhere near me, having learned what had happened after that game. So, a week or so goes by. She's calmed down. Ben has, of course, been groveling to apologize to her. But, again, he deserved every bit of that. So eventually I'm at the Downing University Center again, and I'm having lunch with Sally between classes with a couple other friends, and she kind of takes me off to one side after a while, and she goes, you're not going to tell anybody about that, are you? And I go, no, not until, it's like 5 years from now when we've all graduated and scattered across the country and anything like that, because she knows at the time I was doing like an earlier version of D&D stories, and she knew all about it. I was like, you're not going to like talk about that, are you? It's like, if I did, it would be years from now when nobody knows who I'm talking about or anything like that. And there's this silence between us. We're standing on this balcony looking out over the traffic as it's going by, because the Downing University Center is like 4 stories tall. We're on this balcony looking out, and she's like, and I'm like, was it at least good? And she knows that I know. She's kind of got a flavor of the month thing going on with boys. And I go, was it at least good? Trying to break the ice a little. And she goes, yeah, it was pretty good. I didn't expect Fast Ben to be bigger than Big Ben, though. And I burst into laughter, and I look over and it's like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, Ben's kind of compensating with his weightlifting thing. And Fast Ben's all muscle, so he's still proportioned really well. And I kind of stop her before she goes into like the syrupy details, but that was kind of the end of that campaign. And they did end up playing campaigns together after that. Sally eventually forgave Big Ben for spilling such secrets, but it was not for quite some time. So that game became infamous after a while as the Hot Springs Throwdown. So I hope you enjoyed that story. Yes, there are other Ben and Sally exploits that will eventually come to D&D stories, don't worry. But that is the end of that particular D&D story. Keep gaming.
Hi guys, T here. Remember to hit that like button for me on your way out. If you'd like to see artwork and maps from my gaming table, check out the D&D Stories Facebook page. Also, I have a Patreon if you'd like to toss a few gold pieces into your humble bard's hat. Links in the description below. Keep gaming!